Senator McCain and myself have decided to come down before the 4th of July break, talk about two issues that are very important to our national security. The first issue I'd like to discuss is the threat we face as a nation from terrorist safe havens in Syria and now Iraq. The President has indicated in recent days that it's unacceptable to allow terrorist organizations like ISIS to have safe havens from which to launch attacks against our country. Mr. President, we agree. What are you doing about it? Now, I understand Iraq is complicated. I understand that you would need a new government in Iraq that Sunnis could buy into to probably turn Iraq around. That is a problem. But that is a separate problem from safe havens that can be used to launch attacks against the United States. Please do not turn over to the Iraqi politicians the timeline as to whether or not we will act to protect ourselves. This is the FBI director. My concern is that people can go to Syria, develop new relationships, learn new techniques, and become far more dangerous than flow back. Americans are now in Syria. 7,500 foreign fighters from 50 countries have gone to Syria. They're now in Iraq. The Islamic State in Iraq and Syria was kicked out by al-Qaeda. These are the most extreme people on the planet. They have now gone into Iraq, taken large territories, and up to $500 million in resources. They had a $30 million a year budget. They have more money than they ever dreamed of. Their desire to hit the homeland is growing. Last week, the leader of this group said that we will be coming to America next. So, Mr. President, do not use the political problems in Baghdad as an excuse not to act when it comes to denying safe havens to terrorists who have espoused attacking our country. Where is your plan to dislodge these people in Syria and Iraq? Where is your plan to deal with the safe haven issue? Where is your plan to hit a terrorist organization that's desirous of hitting us? Mr. President, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot alert us as a nation that we're threatened by a safe haven in Iraq and Syria and do nothing about it. I understand the political complexities that exist in Iraq, but I do understand the need to deal with a safe haven issue. What do you envision as a solution to the safe haven problem in Syria and Iraq? When are we going to act? Is there no military component available to the United States to hit a terrorist organization that's operating out in the open in Syria and Iraq that represents a direct threat to our homeland? Mr. President, now's the time for you to come up with a plan to deal with the safe havens. That's a separate and apart issue from dealing with the political complications and the meltdown in Iraq. You have said, the Director of National Security, Mr. Clapper, said that Syria is an apocalyptic state. It is in a very bad way, that the jihadists in Syria represent a direct threat to our homeland. The same jihadists in Syria have moved now into Iraq. 3 years ago, when Senator McCain was urging airstrikes and a safe zone be established, there were less than 1,000 foreign fighters in Syria. Today, we think there's up to 26,000 ISIS types in Syria. Now they're moving through Iraq at lightning speed, taking town after town, amassing resources in terms of military hardware and money that will make them not just a terrorist organization, but a terrorist army. Mr. President, there's a terrorist army on the march in Iraq and Syria. They've indicated they want to hit our nation. They want to strike us in the region, throughout the world, and here at home, and you seem to have no plan. We want to help you. We understand this is complicated, but you, as Commander-in-Chief above all others, you have a duty to come up with a solution to this problem. You have defined the problem well, but you have done nothing to solve the problem, and we stand ready to help you solve that problem. Now, as we try to figure out where to go in Iraq and what's the right strategy, The one thing that's important to me is not to rewrite history. I don't want to dwell on the past, but I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and let this administration, who is of Senator Obama, Senator Clinton, Senator Kerry, were all over the Bush administration for the mistakes they made. That's the way the political process works. Senator McCain, when the Iraq war was going poorly on President Bush's watch, called for the Republican-appointed Secretary of Defense to resign. I would argue that Senator McCain, above all others, has been consistent when it comes to Iraq. It doesn't matter who is making a mistake if he believes one is being made, that he will speak up. The line that there was just a few dead enders in Iraq was not true. And the reason we knew it wasn't true, that Senator McCain and myself went to Iraq numerous times. The first time we went, we're in an SUV with a 3-car convoy. We went down to Baghdad, had dinner, and went shopping. Every time thereafter, the security was tighter, our ability to leave the base was restricted, and the people on the ground who were fighting the war were telling us this thing is not going well. And every time we'd hear from the Bush administration, the media is misrepresenting the truth, and this is just a few dead enders, we knew better, and we spoke up. Abu Ghraib was a direct result of being overwhelmed by circumstances on the ground. We thought that once the Iraqi army disbanded, Saddam Hussein was displaced, that we would be able to handle Iraq with a few thousand troops. The Bush administration was wrong in that calculation. Senator McCain spoke up, and the surge did work. To President Bush's undying credit, you corrected the mistakes that happened on your watch. You kept an open mind, and you changed strategy because the strategy that you originally pursued had failed. President Obama, your strategy has failed. The idea of abandoning Iraq, disengaging politically and militarily, has come home to haunt us as a nation. Senator McCain and myself said back in 2011, if we do not leave a residual force behind as an insurance policy for our own national security interest, we will regret it. 10 to 15,000 soldiers, well placed, would have given capacity to the Iraqi army to allow them to be more effective, and what you see on the ground today would have never happened. I am convinced that ISIS would never be in Iraq the way they are today if there would have been an American military component, 10 to 15,000, providing capacity and expertise to an Iraqi army that is literally falling apart. I'm convinced today that if we'd continued to push the Iraqi political system to reconcile, we would not be where we are today. Dave Petraeus and Ryan Crocker, one general, one diplomat, spent hours every day of the week practically pushing the Sunnis, the Shias, and the Kurds to solve their problems through the political process, and it was working. In 2010, we made a fateful mistake. We allowed Syria to go bad. Syria became the supply center for al-Qaeda in Iraq that was on its back. In 2010, the surge had worked. Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is the predecessor to ISIS, was completely devastated, and they're back in the game for three reasons. Syria became a failed state, and we had a chance to stop that and did not. And they were being resupplied from Syria with equipment and fighters. We decided to disengage from Iraq politically. We had a hands-off approach to the political problems in Baghdad, and we withdrew our troops all from 2010 to 11. Those three things became a perfect storm to lead us to where we are today. We do want to look forward because looking backward doesn't solve the problem. But here's what we will not accept. We will not accept a rewriting of history. When this administration says that the reason we have no troops in Iraq today is because of the Iraqis, that is an absolute false statement. In May of 2011, Senator McCain and myself, at the request of Secretary Clinton, went to Iraq to talk about a follow-on agreement, a strategic partnership agreement that had in its making a military component that would give legal protections to our troops who were left behind. I remember this like it was yesterday. We were in a meeting with Prime Minister Maliki, and we were talking about leaving troops behind and whether or not the Iraqis would give us the legal protections that we needed. Because I told Prime Minister Maliki, no American politician is going to allow soldiers to be left behind in a foreign country without legal protections. That if a person was charged with a crime in Iraq, given the immaturity of their legal system, I did not feel comfortable allowing that soldier to go into the Iraqi legal system. We would deal with disciplinary problems. He turned to me and said, "How many soldiers are you talking about?" I turned to Ambassador Jeffries, the U.S. ambassador, General Austin, the commander, and said, "What's the answer?" And they replied to me, "We're still working on that." And the Prime Minister of Iraq laughed. This was in May of 2011. We could not tell the Prime Minister of Iraq how many troops we were talking about. We went to the Kurdish portion of Iraq and talked to President Barzani. He would have accepted any amount of troops we wanted to leave behind. He was openly embracing a follow-on force. We met with Mr. Alawi, one of the leaders of the Iraqi Sunni bloc, very open-minded to a follow-on force. The day after we left Iraq, Prime Minister Maliki issued a statement saying that if the other parties would agree, he would agree to a follow-on force. November the 15th, 2011, we had a hearing with General Dempsey and Secretary Panetta in the Armed Services Committee. And we asked the following question: was it the Iraqis who rejected a follow-on force, originally envisioned to be 18 or 19,000? The bottom line number for the Pentagon was 10. I asked the question, was it the Iraqis who said, "No, we don't want 18,000, that's too many"? And the numbers kept going down to finally 3,000. Senator McCain asked the question, and the answer was, the reduction in numbers that we would be willing to offer to the Iraqis did not come from a rejection by Iraq, but by a reducing of the numbers by the White House. In other words, the cascading effect of the numbers from 18,000 to 3,000 was not because Iraq saying no, it's because the White House kept changing the numbers to the point that the force envisioned would be ineffective and fail. Those are the facts. And Senator McCain will address the statements by the President before, during, and after. But I'm here to tell you without any doubt in my mind, the reason we don't have troops in Iraq after 2011 is because the Obama administration wanted to get to zero. They wanted to honor a campaign promise to get us out of Iraq. They did so, and now they're trying to blame the Iraqis. They're trying to rewrite history. I can understand why they don't want to own what happened in Iraq. I can't understand why we would let them get away with it. And I am not going to let them get away with it. Going forward, we've got a mess on our hands, and I want to help the President where I can. But, Mr. President, you were very good at questioning the policies of the Bush administration, and you held nothing back. I'm here to tell you that I know what you're saying about Iraq is not true. On October the 21st, during a conference call with staff, Dennis McDonough and Tony Blankley, the former National Security Advisor to Vice President Biden, now in the National Security Council, briefing staff members about the problems with legal immunities, was asked a question by Senator McCain's staff person. If you could get a legal agreement that we felt was solid, would you leave any troops behind? And they said no. So we're going to write them a letter. There's several of our staff was on that phone call. And we're going to ask Dennis McDonough, Mr. Blankley, to say, did you say that? And they can say whatever they want to. But I have people that I know and I trust that were on that phone call. And they know what was said. So with that, I would turn it over to Senator McCain.
Well, I would just ask my colleague just one question before we go on, and that is, in addition to this overwhelming information of which you and I were deeply involved, that proves conclusively that the President of the United States did not want to leave a single troop member behind in Iraq and succeeded in doing so, did the senator from South Carolina ever hear the President of the United States, either before the decision was made, during, or after, say, did you ever hear any record of him saying that he wanted to leave a residual force behind?
Quite the opposite. If you go back and look at the tape around this debate, the president basically said, you know, we left Iraq. We're not going to be bogged down by Iraq. There was no regret that I am so sorry that we couldn't convince the Iraqis to leave a residual force behind, because that would have been the best outcome for Iraq and the United States, and I regret that we could not get there, and they will regret this decision. None of that happened. It was all about the last combat soldier is out. We're done with Iraq. We've given them all the help we can give them. We're going to move on. We're not going to be bogged down. Now the place has gone to hell. It's a direct threat to the United States, and they're trying to rewrite history. And I think it was October the 21st.
And the President of the United States, in the last couple of days, please correct me, is the first time he said it was the Iraqis that wanted to leave a force behind. The first time in the last couple of days.
The Iraqis did not want to leave a force behind.
I would ask my colleague from South Carolina, are you concerned about the Iranian influence? And what do you believe is the situation that could evolve on the Jordanian border?
Well, if you listen to the people who are launching these attacks, they say they're going to Jordan. What are they trying to accomplish? As bizarre as it may sound to the average American, they have a very specific plan, and it sort of goes like this. They want to purify their religion. They're Sunnis. They have a version of Islam, Sunni Islam, that is beyond horrific. That is a woman's worst nightmare. If you want to find a war on women, go to Syria, Iraq, and eventually Afghanistan, I'm afraid. You would not believe what these people are capable of doing, what they will do to a person who smokes. They'll chop your finger off. I mean, they'll kill children in front of their parents. These people represent the worst in humanity. And my fear is the president's fear, that the stronger they get over there, the more exposed we are here. So, Mr. President, if you believe it's not in our national security interest to allow these folks to have a safe haven in Syria and now Iraq, what are you doing about it? You've got political problems in Iraq, I got that. But why does that prevent us from attacking these people in Syria, where their leadership resides and where their supply depots are? There has to come a time when this country is going to commit itself to defending itself. My goal is to keep the war over there so it doesn't come back here. Senator McCain, 3 years ago now almost, urged us to act in a way that would have allowed the moderate forces of the opposition to be empowered and to avoid where we are today. We chose not to act at our own peril. So I want to make this crystal clear, that this area that Senator McCain has described in Iraq represents a terrorist safe haven in the hands of people who want to attack us here at home. Now, I'm not just making that up. The Director of National Intelligence, the FBI Director, and Jay Johnson, the head of Homeland Security, have all said that Syria represents a threat to the homeland. Well, if a Syrian enclave and safe haven represents a threat to the homeland, an Iraqi enclave, bigger and richer, surely represents a threat to the homeland, and the president admitted as such. So I don't want to hear any more discussions about we've got to wait till Iraq gets its house in order before we protect American national security interest. As to Jordan, now's the time in a bipartisan fashion for the Congress to speak with one voice, tell the world, everyone in the region, that we will defend Jordan. The King of Jordan is the last moderate voice in the Mideast surrounding Israel. The King of Jordan has been the most faithful ally to America. The King of Jordan has been effectively engaged with Israel. The King of Jordan represents the best hope of the Mideast. If we allow a terrorist army, not an organization now, an army of committed jihadists to invade that country and put the king at risk, that will be one of the great tragedies in modern history. And I think it is now time to let the terrorist army know you're not going into Jordan, and say it in such a fashion as not to give Iraq away. But if we don't reinforce Jordan quickly, it would be a mistake. I have a high confidence in the Jordanian military, but let me tell you this. It is in our interest for the king to survive. It is in our interest for Jordan to flourish. It is in our interest for ISIS to be stopped in their tracks. In Iraq, it is in our interest for them to be wiped off the face of the earth to the extent possible. It is in our interest to go on the offensive before it's too late. The one thing I can tell you I have learned from 9/11, thinking and believing that if you ignore them, they will ignore you is a very bad mistake. 2010, and September the 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, we didn't have one soldier in Afghanistan. We didn't even have an ambassador, and we sent no money in terms of assistance to the Taliban. We were completely disengaged from Afghanistan. How well did that work out? Anytime you disengage from people that bloodthirsty and you believe it will not come back to haunt you, you're making a mistake. Anytime that a group will kill women in a soccer stadium for sport and think that you're safe, if you just ignore them, you're making the mistake for the ages. These people, ISIS, represents a depraved form of humanity in the category of the Nazis. And what are we doing about it? I am tired of ceding city after city, country after country to radical Islam. Now's the time to fight back. Fight back as if it meant fighting for your home and your family, because it does. Fight back over there so we don't have to fight them here. And they are coming here. If you don't believe me, ask them. And the best way to keep them from coming here is to align ourselves with people over there who do not want their agenda for their family and are willing to fight along our side. And right now, who feels comfortable fighting with America? Right now, our enemies are emboldened, our friends are afraid, and now is the time to turn this around, Mr. President. You're waiting and waiting and thinking, and they're on the march. I know this is complicated, but the one thing that is not complicated is that the terrorist organization that you said could not have safe haven has the largest safe haven in the history of the world. They're richer than they've ever been. They're more powerful than they've ever been, and you're doing nothing about it. And you need to do something about it before it's too late, and we stand ready to help you.